Almost. Major. Holy fucking shit, this is major!
Being that we're talking about Center of the World, which is an unrated movie, which is different from what we're going to be talking about, but it's unrated as in it didn't want to get an NC-17, so it decided to go unrated. Also, the same thing happened with Requiem for a Dream when that came out. But we're going to talk about movies that were R-rated in theaters, and then on DVD, they were released as unrated. What was everybody's first exposure to that? I was looking it up, and yes, American Pie was the first movie to be advertised as unrated on home video, and then basically, if I remember correctly off the top of my head, they did that, one, to make people want to buy the DVD when it came out, but also if they released it unrated, then places like Blockbuster, which would not hold movies that were NC-17, it's like they didn't have a policy about that, so Blockbuster had to carry it, was the type of thing. But I do remember... but also the thing about the unrated ones, it was complete bullshit. it was just a marketing thing. They would add like 30 seconds to a minute of like just B-roll, just advertise it like that. But Charlie, do you have any first thoughts about unrated movies?
Yeah, I remember the first unrated DVD I bought was for Anchorman, which was a pretty strong PG-13, as I recall, but really the only thing I can remember about the unrated DVD is they have the one scene after Ron Burgundy gets fired for dropping fuck on live television while they're escorting him out. Basically, the only thing is Will Ferrell just going, "Don't you know I never say the word fuck? I never fucking say that, ever!" Like, that's like the only thing. Like, they couldn't say fuck more than once, so they were like, "Hey, we got this joke. We can throw that in there. Maybe tweak a little thing, joke here and there to make it like..." We weren't sure if this would be PG-13 appropriate or not, but it's still there. But it's still basically like a PG-13 movie. And then I think the funniest thing for me was I got the unrated version of The Ring 2, which was like advertised as like even more too intense for theaters, and really there's not even like extra
more
scares.
Deer.
It's more like just scenes of Naomi Watts just like inspecting an abandoned barn or something. Like, there's nothing there.
Could not show that in theaters.
Yeah.
No. God, they had an unrated version of that? Jesus. Oh, I do remember the DVD cover of... It was either the PG-13 cut or the unrated cut. It has a weird close-up of Samara, but it looks like an elderly man. Like, it's the most weirdest looking DVD cover.
Is it the one where she's sitting in the chair?
No. It's from The Ring 2, and like it... I don't know. It's just a close-up of Samara, and it looks really weird. I'll have to look it up later and send it to y'all, but I remember that being... When that was the DVD cover, I was like, I already hated this movie in theaters, but I'm not even going to give it a second shot. This is disgusting. I mean, I know I did have the American Pie unrated DVD when I was like 11 or 12, which was like, it was like in a clear case. It had just the women from American Pie. It had like Chris and Paul White's signature on it, like it was a fucking Criterion release.
What?
We're just like, no, this is cinema. Yeah. Goodness, trying to think of other ones. Bryden, do you have any... Are there any unrated basement DVDs that you have?
I don't know if we have this particular edition of the movie. Like, we have Wedding Crashers on DVD, but I don't know if we have the uncorked edition, which is
man!
That was the specific brand of the unrated thing.
I had the uncorked edition. I can't tell you what was different in that fucking movie. I mean, like...
Neither can I.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
Quick plug. I'm always looking at differences between unrated and R-rated or any other type of differences. There's a movie website called movie-censorship, and like it has screenshots of every single second that's different and everything like that. So if you're obsessed like me, you definitely check that out. I use that all the time.
Yeah. And the more notable examples I could think of unrated stuff, it more comes with like PG-13 stuff that I saw in theaters, like that like had like a little bit more swearing on the DVDs. Like, I recently, like in the last couple of years, I watched all the Die Hard movies, and like the one PG-13 Die Hard, Live Fear Die Hard. I think like the one fuck that they have in like the theatrical cut is like, "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfuck," and then like he shoots himself through the shoulder, and like it kind of like silences the fuck and everything. But then what's funny is like in the unrated cut, they have like him saying fuck, but like it's clearly added in after because like it never matches up with like how the lips are
funny.
moving, or like they're faced away from the camera, so it's like, okay, so like like I don't know, it's just very janky how like they're trying to just like, yeah, we'll just like spice
Right.
That sounds like a Soul Survivor situation.
Oh man, the killer cut. Come on, man.
Yeah.
No, I do remember with that. The thing is they released the unrated on DVD and never released the unrated on Blu-ray, because like it was very obviously not just like an unrated movie. It's like this was shot as an R type thing. Trying to think of other ones where it's like very much they cut it down to a PG-13 and the unrated version was supposed to be, because I do remember, especially with horror movies around the time, there was directors that was just like, yeah, we had to cut it down to a PG-13, but just watch out for the DVD release because that's going to be unrated. That's going to be the R-rated version. Like Cursed, I believe, was cut down.
Yeah, I remember watching the unrated cut of that and being like, how did they make this PG-13? Because I only saw it on DVD. I didn't see it in theaters, but there's some like graphic shit in that movie.
Right.
The one weird example of like, oh, I actually do give a shit about this is I remember, and this is what a sick puppy I was in college. I invited friends over to, none of us had seen Solo or the 120 Days of Sodom. And I might have told this story before. Apologies if I'm repeating myself. And Kevin, you can cut it out. But like, they didn't get Solo from Netflix. They got, they brought over a copy of Martyrs that they had, or a friend. And I had not even heard of it. I was like, wait, what is this? Like, it was like 10 years ago. So they were just like, no, we're going to get like stoned and just watch this. It's just as fucked up as Solo, if not more so. So we watched the whole thing. And I'm like, you know, rattled. And then we took a photo and put it on social media. And we're like, we just watched this, you know, fucked up piece of shit. And then they were just like, oh, you got the R-rated version. And we were like, what? And they were like, yeah, look, this is the uncut version. And I was like, well, I can't say I just watched the most fucked up movie ever and watch a neutered version of it. So I like ended up buying it for $7 on Amazon and was like, okay, I just have to sit through this again. And there were actually things where I'm like, oh no, they definitely didn't show that. So like,
I'm sure they definitely cut out a lot of the de-skinning stuff.
Well, that, and also like the woman with the thing nailed over her eyes when they take the
when
nails
they peel it
out.
off. Yeah.
Yeah, so I now have that as a part of my library as a result of that, because I just couldn't live with myself having said I'd seen the whatever blockbuster cut of Martyrs was.
Right. It's like watching an R-rated version of Inside.
Oh god, I can't even imagine.
Which version did you watch? The Dimension Films Extreme?
God, yes!
Yeah, that's that. I have that DVD too.
You ever just throw that on at Christmas time, you know?
I actually did get my sister to watch that during Christmas time, and then my mom was allowing us to eat downstairs and watch the movie while eating, and my mom made pasta that night, just like drenched in spaghetti sauce. And I just remember my sister looking at me being like, I fucking hate you.
You can watch that downstairs. No, it's okay, Ma.
Yeah.
It's okay. Welcome to this week's edition of Almost Major. We are covering the mini major studios and the films they release. We are still on our Artisan miniseries, and today we are covering The Center of the World from 2001. My name is Kevin Tudor. I'm here with Charlie Nash.
Hello.
And Bryden Doyle.
Hello.
And like I said, we are covering The Center of the World from 2001. This came out in the U.S. April 20th, 2001. It didn't premiere. It screened at Cannes a month later out of competition. Why did I say Cannes? I've literally been... It's Cannes, right?
Yeah.
Is it Cannes?
It is. It's Cannes.
I still occasionally say Con because that was how I trained my brain to say it. Yeah.
I legitimately told my girlfriend yesterday. I was like, no, it's Cannes. It's definitely Cannes. So this was a limited release up to 50 theaters. I could not find the budget, but I assume under $5 million easily, especially with the video aspect of it. Opening weekend made $67,000, domestic gross of $1 million, and an overall worldwide gross of $1.4 million. Top 5 films that weekend was Bridget Jones's Diary, Spy Kids, Along Came a Spider, Crocodile Dundee in Los Angeles, and an unimpeachable 10 out of 10 classic Freddy Got Fingered.
That's a weird top 5.
That is
I know.
Very weird top 5.
Back when you could go to the like, look, there's something for literally everybody. We have a rom-com, we have a kids action movie, we have like a John Grisham-esque Long Came a Spider, even though it's a sequel to Kiss the Girls.
James Patterson is the author, I think, for that one. James Patterson.
Right. A legacy sequel that nobody asked for, and the blankest check maybe ever.
Also, it's kind of strange that Carla Gugino was also a lead in Spy Kids the same week
Yeah.
it came out.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's also in like Spy Kids 2 and 3, right? I'm
I
pretty
believe
sure.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. There was the 4th Spy Kids movie. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I saw it in theaters.
Isn't like Joel McHale like one of the leads or some shit?
Yeah, Joel McHale, Jessica Alba, Jeremy Piven's the secret bad guy. Spoiler alert, but
I think
yeah.
I
Oh,
saw,
man.
I saw up to 3 and then I gave up. And I remember seeing Spy Kids 3D, and it was still when they gave you the crummy blue and red glasses. Yeah.
Yeah. When I rented it on DVD, it came with those. So.
Jesus.
Oh.
Yeah, watching that on like a 20-inch CRT TV, hell yeah.
Very immersive, I'm assuming.
It's coming right at me, man. Yeah. Number 1 song this week in the U.S., All For You by Janet Jackson. The longest running number 1 song of 2001 at 7 weeks at number 1. And also the number 1 song this week in Canada was All For You by Janet Jackson. So they cancel each other out, but great song. Center of the World is about a successful computer engineer who meets a stripper in a cafe. He offers her $10,000 and she offers 3 days and nights of no penetration in Vegas. That's all. That's the IMDb logline. Is that good enough? Do you think that? I don't know.
I mean, like, she like says like, okay, he invites her like for like $10,000, yeah, and like her terms are like no penetration, no kissing on the mouth, and like no, what else is it? Yeah, no breaking the rules, no feelings. That's the big one that she says. Like, you know, where it's like we have to stick to the agreement, and then like they go to Vegas, and it's just sort of like following them as like, you know, they do their like sort of.
As Peter Skarsgård breaks every damn rule, man.
Yeah, and then like also involved, like they just sort of like wander around Vegas and try to like they sort of seem like they're getting to know each other, and they try to struggle to stick to the agreement. But yeah, I don't know. It's mostly just them like talking in a room. Like it's not exactly a plot driven movie. It's more character.
No.
Yeah.
And then the first 15 minutes, I believe they're talking. And she asks him, like, oh, is it weird to be outside without your computer? And then he's just like, no, it's not that bad, but it's definitely like, I forget the exact quote, but it's like, yeah, everything on there is just the center of the world. And I was just like, yeah, on the nose. There we are.
I also I watched this movie today. I went the entire time without realizing that Peter Sarsgaard's full character name is Richard Longman. Jesus Christ.
And Molly Parker's character does not have a last name.
Nope. It's plus the machine. I don't know. Jesus. I'm gonna see myself out.
I mean, we don't see the other members of the band that she's playing with at the end. You know.
She wants to be a drummer. God.
And then, you know, throughout the years, she became the lead singer. Yeah. Directed by Wayne Wang. Prior to this, he did Chan is Missing in 1982, The Joy Luck Club in 1993, Smoke in 1995. After this, just a triple feature banger of Made in Manhattan in 2002, Because of Winn-Dixie in 2005, and Last Holiday in 2006.
I saw Last Holiday on a date. It was
How'd that
fine.
go?
It was fine. You know,
Yeah,
I was already
I don't
dating
really
the
remember
girl
much.
at the time. This was back when I was dating women. Jesus, I was like 15, and it was, you know, it was a nice little like we killed time on a Sunday. It's not bad. I've seen bits of the Joy Luck Club. I remember we read the book freshman year of my high school English class, and then we watched the movie, and the movie has sex scenes in it. And I just remember my professor or my teacher just literally turning the TV off for like maybe a minute. And then just being like, I'm just going to assume it's better now. And it was every time. But we were just like anticipating like just something awful because we were dumb teenagers.
I remember that with watching the Crucible movie with,
Yes.
who's in that? Winona Ryder and Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yep. Joan Allen.
Like at the start, I guess, where people are getting killed and she just held up a folder to the TV and was like, no, still not good.
But was the
Nope.
volume still going?
Yeah, so we just heard people dying. And then another time, it was another English class, we watched the Romeo and Juliet from like the 70s, which has like so much nudity in it. And then I guess our teacher just didn't know, and we were all reacting, and she goes, What? Oh, well, you already saw it. She's like, I'm not getting up. I don't care. After this very strange 3-movie run, he goes back to making films in China and Japan, like he did earlier in his career. Written by Ellen Benjamin Wang. This is a pseudonym created to cover the numerous contributions to the screenplay, and I'm assuming the 4 people that have story by credits, which are Wayne Wang, Miranda July, Paul Auster.
I assume that's how you pronounce it. Who worked with him on Blue in the Face and Smoke.
Right. And Siri Hutzvet all contribute to the script. That's what I assume.
That's Paul Auster's wife too. That's worth mentioning. Siri.
Okay. Because I have a trivia fact down here that says after coming up with the initial story idea for the movie, Wayne got in touch with author Siri Hutzvet, who quickly turned in a draft of the screenplay. So Ellen Benjamin Wang does not exist. Sorry. Starring Peter Skarsgård as Richard Longman. Prior, Another Day in Paradise in 1998 and Boys Don't Cry in 1999. This is pretty much like 2 or 3 years into his career. After this, Orphan from 2009, hell yeah. Night Moves in 2013, and The Lie in 2018, hell yeah.
Holy shit. I mean, Kevin, I think you're like the only person I know who's seen that movie. That movie is fucking bug nuts.
That movie is fucking ridiculous.
What is this movie? I don't even know what this is.
So, okay, I'll try to keep this as brief as possible, but it's like Joey King plays like the daughter of Peter Sarsgaard and Mireille Enos, and while Joey King is like getting a ride from Peter Sarsgaard to like some sort of like recital or some other thing, they pick up one of Joey King's friends, and then they go off, and Joey King, there's screaming heard, and Peter Sarsgaard rushes to find Joey King. She's like, "Oh my gosh, I pushed my friend, and she's dead now." And then Sarsgaard and Enos like try to like cover up their daughter's crimes and everything, and like while like the friend's dad is like investigating, and it like leads to just like this insanely stupid twist at the end. I saw it at TIFF back in like 2018, and like the movie plays it like deadly serious. It's like in the gray like drab like Canadian winter and everything, and like everyone's just like either like underplaying everything or like screaming at the top of their lungs, and then like people were just like howling with laughter by the end of it because it's just like so stupid. But it's
God. Her friend is Devery Jacobs, who's on Reservation Dogs.
Yes, she's a very good actress. Reservation Dogs a much better role for her than what she has to do in The Lie, I would say.
Yeah, spoilers for The Lie if nobody cares. She shows up at the end and it was all a prank.
But they killed her dad.
What?
Yeah. Skarsgård and his wife literally just killed the dad to cover it up, and then she's just like, "Hey, what happened? Where's my dad? This was all a joke."
Oh my fucking god.
Which makes no sense because like there's a scene where the dad comes over and like King is like hiding out and trying to like whatnot. It's just like, well, if it's a joke, why are you pretending like she actually died?
Yeah. That doesn't. Well, my brain just broke a little bit. He was also in The Batman, in a role that is eerily similar to Maggie Gyllenhaal's in The Dark Knight. I wonder if that's intentional, considering they are married.
Which are you gonna announce that you've been dating Peter Skarsgård from this movie, or
well, I was
just from this movie, not today.
I was texting you like oh wow, Peter Sarsgaard is very young and attractive in this movie, and then without spoiling anything, he does some things towards the end that I was just like, oh okay,
I was like thinking, how you went to the movie?
Yeah, I was just like, oh, he's not boyfriend material.
Yeah, no. That reminds me of when I was watching Suburbia, and I was like, holy shit, fucking Nicky Katz and Parker Posey. Nicky Cat rules in this movie, and then like 30 minutes later, I was just like, well, he's actually a pretty big piece of shit in this movie, but he looks really cool.
Nicky Cat, the actor, rules. The character, not so much.
Yeah. Also, Molly Parker plays Florence. Prior to this, she was in Kissed in 1996. Watch that movie. It is fucking nuts.
That movie's great. Totally underrated 90s. I wouldn't call it an erotic thriller, but like it's an erotic Is it even
Something.
Is it even erotic? I don't know. Like, I mean, it's a really
it's a coming of age story. How about that?
It is a daringly provocative look at necrophilia. For those who don't know, let's just get that out of the way, just so we don't send anyone just being like, well,
oh, Kiss, this is gonna be great.
Oh,
where are her clothes at?
Oh,
what's
my. Is that person dead? Oh dear.
It's also only like 70 minutes long, so check it out.
Yeah.
She's also in Wonderland in 1999. After this, Max in 2002, which, I don't know, may or may not be talking about in the future, who knows? And Madeline's Madeline in 2018, and was on Deadwood and House of Cards for numerous episodes. Carly Gugino?
Carla Gugino.
Gugino, yeah. As Jerry. Prior to this, she was in Motorcycle Gang in 1994, which is a part of this weird 1994 Showtime series of movies called Rebel Highway, where they did like 10 direct-to-TV like remakes of like 50s movies. And like I think Mary Lambert did one, Ralph Bakshi did one. There's just really wild. Robert Rodriguez did one with David Arquette. Yeah, I've been tracking them down recently. Been trying to watch them. Also in Snake Eyes in 1998, and like we said, Spy Kids the same year. After this, she's in Watchmen in 2009, Man of Steel in 2013, and Gerald's Game in 2017. Yeah, she's really good in Gerald's Game.
She's great all the time. Mike Flanagan has been very committed to giving her a career resurgence, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Wasn't she on Hill House?
Yes, she was. Yeah.
Right. Trivia. Just gonna get this one out of the way. Molly Parker did not simulate self-pleasuring for her masturbation scene. She played it for real. Next trivia fact. The day before release, the owner of the Esquire Theater in Cincinnati, Ohio, ordered 5 seconds to be cut from the print of the film shown in the theater, the lollipop scene where a stripper puts a lollipop in her vagina. When this was revealed, the distributor ordered him to stop showing the censored movie altogether. The critic that called him out on it was subsequently banned from the theater, and it raised questions as to whether this theater, the only one in town that would show unrated or NC-17 films, had censored the films it had shown before. The theater owner defended his actions and refused to comment on such suggestions. Wow.
Wang also said that the trailer originally had a line where Molly Parker says, "You've got the hottest, tightest, wettest pussy," and then there were Artisan says played the trailer for Requiem for a Dream, one of their other unrated movies, but then Wang says some theaters wouldn't play it because they were morally offended.
I'm gonna have to look at that trailer because I'm gonna have to put it in here, and that's gonna be wild if it's like a red band or not a red band because it's not R-rated.
I think it said the trailer originally had this line, so maybe they cut it out. They were thinking, well, we slipped that in, and then nope, it didn't work. Maybe it didn't work.
If we're on the topic of the lollipop scene, that's the one thing I knew about this movie going in, apart from like the bare bones plot, and I was kind of like, it comes in at like 7 minutes in, and it really isn't. It's not done by any major player, and it's just sort of there, and I was like, oh wow, okay, like. It is kind of fascinating to me that there was so much controversy and advertising around this one moment that comes 7 minutes in and isn't really integral to it's integral to what the movie's trying to say, but it isn't integral to anything involving any of the main players, which is what I thought.
No, it's the poster too.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I said in the group chat, I was like, when that happened, I was like, wait, I thought this was like R-rated. What in the fuck am I watching?
Yeah.
This is the other part of the trivia fact that I was talking about that Husvets turned in the draft of the screenplay. Recalled Wang, I wanted the script written very quickly because I just wanted to jump in there and shoot it and also be free to improvise from it. I feel like the film's a cross between Smoke and Blue in the Face. It started from a specific, and then we went and took it and we worked with it organically. Wang also got in touch with acclaimed performance artist and filmmaker Miranda July, who shares story credit. This is Wang's first feature in digital video. Wang said, I always wanted it to look real and explicit and voyeuristic. It's as though you're standing right there watching them.
Hey, I'm Richard.
What do you want me to do, baby?
What do you do?
I make a lot of noise.
There is a place where dreams are exchanged,
I mean, if I was gonna go to Vegas with you, there'd be a lot of conditions.
where fantasies are brokered,
Richard, you can't do this. We have to stick to the agreement.
What if I paid you $10,000?
and where reality is bought and sold.
I said no touching.
So, what sort of business are you two in?
It's about money. You have it and I don't. You pay me to do this, so I did it. You pay me to enjoy it, so I enjoyed it. What did you think, that I was falling in love with you?
Initial thoughts. Charlie, you have the most initial of the initial thoughts since you watched it recently.
Yeah,
What do you think?
I watched it a few hours ago. I think parts of this movie are interesting. I think the concept is interesting. I love Peter Sarsgaard and Molly Parker as actors, and I also love Carla Gugino. I think there are I was sitting here watching it going like, I miss when even independent films these days were not afraid to delve into sex and the ways in which sex becomes this like even like, I guess it's interesting how sex is used as like a form of bartering here, and like it is very sexually explicit without ever being, I would argue it's not an erotic film at all. Would you say, Bryden, you're kind of like going like
Parts of it I think are maybe a little bit erotic, I think, but like it definitely changes as the movie goes on.
Yeah.
And, like it's not like throughout
Yeah,
the
that's
whole
what-
thing.
that's
It
what I
depends
kinda
on
mean.
the scene.
Yeah, I guess I also found it interesting as like a time capsule into 2001, and like these types of movies were being made more often, even if very infrequently still. And it's not like this movie made a lot of money or has a huge
It went to
reputation.
theaters, though.
It went to theaters though. I mean,
By the same distributor as Blair Witch Project.
yeah.
And the director who had made like major movies for studios like The Joy Luck
Yeah.
Club, or like the movie before this is like Anywhere But Here.
Yeah,
which is
the
like
Natalie Portman
Yeah.
and Susan Sarandon movie. Yeah.
Like that's wild to go from like this to from that to this, and then from this to Made in Manhattan. Like,
Yeah.
it's such
It
a
is
weird
The
trajectory.
very
bizarre.
next year.
It is. Even as someone who has not seen Made in Manhattan, I feel like that movie. I feel like I've seen Made in Manhattan because it was just like I grew up around the time where it was so big. It's almost like someone like put a dock in my brain, Matrix style, and just uploaded Made in Manhattan into my brain. Even
Oh,
though I've
yeah.
never seen it.
I've never seen Wedding Planner, but I've seen Wedding Planner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It gets ugly at the end in ways that I think were like inevitable, but kind of obvious. I guess I wasn't upset that I watched this movie. I'm glad I did. I didn't really get all that much out of it that I haven't seen before, and I kind of watched this being like, well, is this groundbreaking for 2001, or have we like they simultaneously don't make movies like this anymore, but also I have seen stuff like this that's covered similar ground. I've had a very weird mixed reaction to this movie.
Right. I heard somebody try to compare it to Exotica, and I was like, can you get the fuck out of my face?
I've heheard about that too. I'm just like, I don't understand where the comparison is, because Exotica is all about like, it's mainly
It's because strip club. And it's just like, what? No.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, if you want characters saying you can't touch me, then sure. But like, Exotica is about like a group of people using sex in completely different ways than this, and it's ultimately about trauma. Exotica, sex is kind of just a window dressing to get people in, and it's really about these broken people. Sex barely comes into play with, with what's going on at the core of that movie. But like this, it's like, I guess, Peter Sarsgaard's character is kind of, just an annoying Mark Zuckerberg who exactly what he wants at all times. And then, we get the answer that at least I saw coming a mile away that wasn't really like very dramatically compelling, even if it's very well done, like even if it's very well acted by performers who are daring to go to some brave places. I won't say it's not like it doesn't have moments where I'm like, oh wow, they really went there, but like, did I get anything out of it that I haven't seen in a bunch of other films before when it comes to sex as, and wealth and all this stuff? Not really. I know that sounds kind of vague, but I'm sure we'll get into it.
Brad?
Yeah, I kind of liked this one. It definitely lost a little bit of it depreciated a little bit for me the more I thought about it, especially with the ending. But I guess it's interesting thinking about how this compares with some of Wang's other movies, and because I've seen like a few of them, and I've also like his collaborations with Paul Auster. I've read one of Auster's books, City of Glass, and I also have seen Smoke. It is interesting how they do kind of traffic in similar. This and Smoke and some of Auster's other work traffic in similar territories about like people throwing themselves into something so that they can fill like a void within themselves. Like in City of Glass, it's a guy who's like lost his family and he's like throwing himself into a mystery so that he can like find some sort of purpose and everything. And here, you know, Peter Sarsgaard, he's like very lonely and trying to like just sort of like investing all this meaning in a relationship with Molly Parker so that he will feel like a little less lonely. And the idea of like people like living out fantasies and deciding that maybe the fantasy is like a comfort that they enjoy better than the real thing. Like that is kind of a thing that's explored in Smoke, where it's like one of the storylines in that movie is like Harold Perrineau like finds out where his birth father is living, and then he like befriends his birth father without like telling. And his birth father is played by Forrest Whitaker, and he befriends him and like starts working at like a garage with him, like so that, like, but like doesn't tell his dad like who he is because he like wants to like he maybe likes being friends with his dad rather than like, you know, letting the relationship actually like, you know, be as it actually is. So it's interesting, like, to sort of seeing that those sort of similar themes here in Center of the World, and you know, Wayne Wang also talked about how like he liked setting it in Vegas because, you know, it's like all about like characters like living in a fantasy, and the city itself is a fantasy, and definitely it helps with like, you know, the transactional nature of the relationship where it is, you know, a paid relationship, you know, and Las Vegas is very much all about like gambling and money and all that. I liked the early digital video look too, especially when it gets like really up close and like the skin textures and everything, like, you know, right in like in people's eyes and everything. And Wayne's also very good at like shooting conversations too, I think, like between people, like, you know, focusing on like in terms of like who he's focusing on during a conversation. I really liked the whole scene where like Molly Parker is like talking about her history as like
a
locked car specialist. Yeah. And the camera's just like slowly zooming in on like her face and everything. And it's like she's like going into like these memories that she seems to have not thought about for a very long time. It just like gets like really up close to her eyes. It's like really intimate in a way that like really, I think, heightens the emotional impact of the scene. So really like that stuff. I think I'm with you, Charlie, that like you get like a sense of where the movie's going with the Peter Sarsgaard character, about how like he keeps saying he's a nice guy, but then like you hear about like some of the people that Carla Gugino, who also like traffics in sex work, it seems, she like, and like talking about like a client who seemed like also a nice guy but then turned violent. You're like thinking, okay, you can kind of see where this is going, and also the fact that it's Peter Sarsgaard, who I love him as an actor, and I think he is like really good here, like, you know, striking a balance between like kind of awkwardly charming, but also like, is this guy a serial killer or something? I mean, that's kind of like, there is like kind of this weird menacing charisma to him that he has even in his most repugnant roles. I mean, Boys Don't Cry, I mean, he, as vile as his character is, there is like kind of like a where he will often be walking that line in a scene where he's like, you know, putting his arm around someone, and it's like so loaded with menace and threat, but also like him being like, oh yeah, we're all buddies here and everything. And he brings that kind of energy here too. And he and Parker, I think, and this is a movie too where like if the actors in it don't have chemistry, the movie dies. And I think he and Parker have like really compelling chemistry where he is like almost like where the shifting power dynamics where she will be in charge and he's almost like a kid almost, where he's like sitting on the floor like listening to her and like trying to get information out of her. But then there are other times where she's like being a little more subservient to him, and their dynamic, like the way the temperature of their interactions changes throughout the film where you're not entirely sure about what they're feeling. That's very compelling to watch. But then I don't know, the ending, it feels like it's I don't know, the bleakness isn't necessarily the problem, but it's also, it feels like it's just like the inevitability feels like very predictable, where it's like, oh gosh, like, you know, like it feels like a little obvious because I feel like I've seen these kind of characters before, and and then the ending, I don't know, the last shot kind of rubs me the wrong way, where, and I think the problem too is like so much of the movie is about Parker's character being seen as an idea, and like I get that, but also I feel like the movie's so much about from Sarsgaard's perspective and not enough hers. Like the imbalance between them is like kind of glaring to the point where I'm like, okay, you're making this a little bit too much about how it affects him and everything, especially when what he does at the end is so horrible to her, and it's not really enough about her and how it affects her. And then the fact that it seems like they could possibly be maintaining a relationship at the end rubs me the wrong way. Like, I don't know if it's like, if it's saying like, I don't know if it's depiction versus endorsement and everything, but it's, I don't know. I'm still mulling over my feelings about it. But,
I don't think the movie's endorsing anything, but you're right. I feel like, I mean, every time, I mean, I went in knowing Miranda July was a co-writer, and it's like, every single scene that focuses on Parker feels like it's directly from July's writing. Like the scene that you mentioned about her, you know, breaking into cars where she has a poodle. She had to break out a poodle named Winston Churchill. I'm like, that's a July touch. And also it feels honest. And then there's the sequence where she's kind of putting on this persona in, I don't know what kind of accent she's doing, but like,
right.
Yeah, that also felt very Miranda July-y to me. And the rest of it, I agree with you, Bryden, does feel like very much from a male perspective, which is, you know, not, there's nothing wrong with that, but it does prioritize his psychology over hers most of the time. I don't know.
Yeah, and like we said, like, it's like we've seen this character before. Like, Sarsgaard, like, a very compelling actor, but it's like also you kind of know by him, like, maybe it's like, again, this is early in his career, relatively speaking, but it's like you kind of get his deal pretty early on. You're just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And I think, you know, the filmmaking and the performance are compelling enough that, like, you enjoy watching it, but it's like, when it gets to the end and the heel turn happens, it's like, well, okay. It's a little depressing that this is, like, the route that we had to end up at. Because it seems like, I don't know, it seems like a bit of a, not a cop-out is not the right way to put it, because it is, like, so upsetting when it happens. But it's like, we can't we see, like, another variation on this kind of story, like a transactional relationship? Does it always have to have this predestined ending? I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I know what you mean, because I mean, like, we've been having this conversation more and more, especially since Me Too, and like, this was 2001, but what I found to be interesting is that, like, it wasn't a very well reviewed film, so like, it seems like even in 2001 where people were saying, well, this is obvious, we know this, but it isn't, like, which is also interesting because, like, you know, I did keep thinking about, like, well, what if I watch this in 2001? And obviously you can't watch a movie that came out 21 years ago but with that mindset. But I did wonder if I'm like, am I just being picky about this because we're talking about all this stuff more often now when the internet was kind of on the rise in 2001 and it wasn't really then? But I don't know.
Yeah, and the other part of it is not just Me Too, but also, like, the stigma that's attached to sex work, I think.
Yes.
That's, like, a thing that seems to have changed a lot in the last few years. I mean, look, I'm still, like, I'm still learning about these things, too. Mm-hmm. So, like, I'm not going to pride myself as an expert on this. And, you know, the stuff where, like, Gigino and Parker are getting to each other about, like, you know, Parker seems to view herself as, like, is accused of being, like, viewed as superior to Gigino because she doesn't do the same kind of sex work as Gigino does. Like, that definitely, that is, like, a dynamic that I have, like, heard about and everything, but, like, does the movie ultimately kind of, like, have, like, a pessimistic view of sex work at the end where it's like, well, a lot of these clients are just going to turn out to be shits, and that's the way it is. Like, I don't know if, like, that's what the movie is saying, but the fact that it is, like, prioritizing kind of these negative depictions of these types of transactional relationships with sex work is, like, a little, I don't know. It seems like maybe something that we maybe have moved past a little bit. I don't know. I'm not, or we should have moved past. I don't know if I'm making sense. And again, I'm not an expert on this, but it's like, it is something to think about.
Oh yeah, definitely. My initial thoughts, it's pretty much we're all on the same page. I kind of liked it. It was definitely it was all good until it hits a certain point, and then from there it's just like, okay, we need to wrap it up because I thought y'all were going somewhere and you're really not. But yeah. I mean, of course, I'd love things that are shot on early video, and you know, maybe it's just nostalgia talking, but I was like, this feels like you shouldn't be watching it. Just like Wang said, it's just like it feels so dirty and like unpolished, and I just love that, and the fact that it was shown in movie theaters is just wild. But I don't know, it has its own personality, you know, more so than, you know, something nowadays that would go to 50 theaters and whatnot would be, you know, 4K beautiful blah blah blah. Yeah, it just has its own personality of the time and whatnot, and it reminded me kind of similar to another shot on video movie that we talked about, Chuck and Buck, where it gets into the intimacy of it all. So it's just like, it's not just using video because it's cheap, it's using video because it's trying to get into the intimacy and also just the uncomfortableness of it, which the video look of it is seeding into the uncomfortableness of the movie and whatnot. But I mean, yeah, Molly Parker's great in it, Peter Skarsgård's great. I'm glad that it's 88 minutes because it kind of feels like it doesn't have much to do. It kind of feels like a play almost. Kind of reminds me of like Tape, the Linklater movie, which is pretty much just all set in a hotel room in Vegas. But yeah, I mean, it's a good time. It's very curio. I don't think anybody I follow on Letterboxd had seen it. It definitely seemed like it slipped through the cracks, but it was a very interesting one to track down and watch. But should we get into the plot?
Sure.
There's not much here. Like we were saying, it's not a very plotty movie, but
I can fill in the gaps if there's any like stuff that we need to maybe like that the Wikipedia doesn't have.
Yeah, there's 3 paragraphs on Wikipedia, and the last one is just explaining the non-linear format of the movie. A couple checks into a suite in Las Vegas. Flashbacks show that he is a computer whiz on the verge of becoming a .com millionaire, played by Peter Skarsgård. She is a lap dancer at a club, Molly Parker. He's depressed, withdrawing from work, missing meetings with investors. He wants a connection, so he offers her $10,000 to spend 3 nights with him in Vegas. She accepts with conditions: 4 hours per night of erotic play and no penetration. During the days in Vegas, they get to know each other, have fun, and meet a friend of hers, casino dealer Jerry, played by Carly Cucino. There, I got it. I'm terrible with names. After the first night, things get complicated. When the 3 days are over, now I'm going to change this. Molly Parker's character makes it clear that she was only there for the money and that the man she spent the time with was nothing more than a client. Upset that his feelings aren't reciprocated, he rapes her and she makes no attempt to stop him. She then masturbates for him, achieving orgasm, saying, "You want to see real? I'll show you real." The next day, he returns home heartbroken. The movie ends with his return to the strip club to see the woman he fell in love with again. She greets him fondly but interacts with him the same way as she would when they first met, as a stripper and a client ordering a lap dance. And this scene at the end is actually just a repeat of a scene that we saw at the beginning, so I don't need to get into the non-linear part that Wikipedia says. It's pretty much just in black and white, so I assumed, because the last shot we see before this is him falling asleep underneath his desk, so I assume he's just dreaming about the first time he met her. But yeah, really quick, but that's all Wikipedia has.
Yeah, I don't know about the last scene, like if it's, I mean, yeah, I totally understand it being a dream, especially because like the talk of like wanting to live out fantasies and being in the city of fantasies of Las Vegas, as Wayne talked about, but also like I think it might be just like him going back and still restarting like a fantasy transactional relationship with her, because it is like the same kind of scene that we saw earlier where she's putting like her foot on his chest and asking him, and he's asking about the options, and she says $60 for two songs, but like the dialogue is like slightly different. There's like a couple of extra lines where she says like, "Oh, it's you," and like I think she says like a couple of other things that like weren't heard in the earlier scene. It's just like slightly different, but it seems to me like they're gonna, I don't know, the way I read it is like I guess they're resuming their relationship in just this transactional setting, even after all the stuff that they went through, where like, or the stuff that he did to her, not to like sidestep like what happened, but
what did you also make of the scene that's like her drumming, because she mentions that she's a drummer, but that obviously doesn't pay the bills, so like there's a shot of her drumming and it doesn't seem like she's getting anything out of it. Like, well,
because she's sad after it, because she actually did like him, but she has to stick to the rules,
Yeah, I wasn't sure how to read that, I guess. I wasn't like...
Yeah, I've never, to paraphrase Vanilla Sky, she is the saddest woman I've ever seen being a drummer. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. That's the thing that's kind of maybe a little janky about the movie, is that like we only get like a couple of scenes where it's just her, like her perspective, and like the one of the few scenes is her just perspective is when she's in the shower, like on the phone, like to her friends, saying like, "Oh fuck, I think I kind of like him," and everything, and then like, but then at the end of the movie she says like, "Well, yeah, you hired me, like I tried to make this," and it's like that's like a totally valid response or anything, like her to like, she's doing this like as long as it's on like terms that they agreed on and everything, like that's totally fair. But then like, I don't know. Not that, like, I have a problem with ambiguity and, like the idea that real feelings could be it. Although, like, I don't know. I just hope the movie isn't, like... I think maybe one thing that worried me was like, is the movie like possibly aligning with Skarsgård's like anger? It's like, do you even feel anything in her? Like, I hope the movie's not like, you know, siding by that, like having that scene
and
where
because
she's, like,
you didn't
suppressing
reciprocate, this is what happens. Now you're sad, but I'm also sad, but it could have been different, you know, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And like, and the fact that like, you know, the one scene like we get like that it's like trying to make it seem like it's equal perspectives like at the end of the movie where like it shows like she is like drumming and everything, but also shows like Skarsgård sad in a cafe and also sleeping alone. And it's like at the end, at this point, who gives a shit how this affects him? Like it's like he's like
that's kind of the way I felt by the end of the movie. Is I was just like, who cares? Like I just was kind of like, yeah. The ending kind of bummed me out. I mean, and I agree with what you're saying, Brandon, about some of the ways it is, you know, examining sex work, and obviously the way we talk about sex work now is much different than we talked about it 20 years ago. But there is the whole, I actually thought that one of the most intriguing, if like dated scenes, is when Carly Gugino comes back a second time and talks about how this nice client, you know, would sit at my table for 3 days and then, you know, but then he beat me up and then, you know, all this stuff, and they're very empathetic to her. And then they're hinting at bisexuality with her and Molly Parker. That's never really fully explored, or what, like, why throw that? Like, I think it's an interesting thing to throw in the mix, but it's never really touched upon like in any way that's interesting other than like taboo, like the bisexuality, like that type of thing. But then there is, you know, Gugino stands up for herself and was like, don't tell me that you're like, why are you talking down to me? You know, like, why are you speaking to me as if I'm lesser than you? But like, nobody should be, you know, like, it's obvious that Molly Parker does feel that way, and it's clear that Carly Gugino has every right to stand up for herself and be like, don't judge me in that way, you're also here to get money. But like, what is the movie really saying about any of this? Is it like, you know, it's ambiguous, which I don't mind, but like, I don't know what the thesis is in terms of like getting to what it is. I think it's clear the movie also judges Skarsgård for being this guy who thinks he can just buy sex and love. Like, it's clear that the movie is saying that, but like, in terms of the female perspective, like, what are they saying about all of this? I don't really know, you know, like.
Yeah, and like, you know, the thing that the word that like really Parker uses to wound Gugino in that confrontation scene is she calls her a whore and everything. But then like at the end of the movie, like Parker like calls herself that, and it's like she's degrading herself. I'm like thinking, is the movie's like agreeing with this? Like, is it seeing it like as an act of degradation or something? Like I don't know. It's like that's like the again like the stigma of it. It's like there shouldn't be anything wrong with it, but at least it's like Parker like, you know, like sadly admitting this. Like I don't know. It's a little janky, but
yeah.
And yeah, and again, that scene with Gugino where she's like giving the story, it's like, it feels like it's just like, it is empathetic to her, and I think Gugino's performance is like really like kind of like fascinating in a raw sort of way with like the twitchy hands and like, you know, sort of like, it's really compelling performance, but it just does almost feel like table setting for like the inevitable like third act turn and everything. And I'm just like, oh, gosh, like, is this where the movie's going? It just feels like
yeah. And we learn more about Gugino's character in those two scenes than we learn about either of their characters. I mean, yeah. I would argue that. I mean, I feel like I got a full picture of what this person's life is like. You know, she's got a 5-year-old son, or about to be 5. She works in Vegas. She does sex work on the side. You know, it's clear that, you know, like, how she uses sex to cope is more on like spot, you know, like in terms of like what she views sex to be in terms of coping with her own like I don't know, like it's just because Molly Parker seems to be a stripper who I don't want to say she's like ashamed of her like Gugino seems to have a fearlessness and a like, okay, whatever, I'm a sexual being too, we'll roll with it, and if it gets me a little money, whatever. Whereas Parker's kind of like seems always secretly ashamed of it whenever she's not on business.
It's like a hierarchy.
Yeah,
it's like a hierarchy. It's like, I'll do this, but I don't do that.
But I don't do that.
And that is
I'm looking at the clock whenever it's 2:00, you know, I'm out of here, like that type of thing. So it is like, which I don't want clean cookie cutter. Like, I don't want anything to be like, you know, obviously sex is messy, so it's not like I'm saying I want a movie to be very clean cut about what it's, you know, approaching here. It's just I don't really know, I didn't really get anything out of what everything this movie's already exploring or is doing, I've seen done better and kind of already knew, which, not to be that person, like, that makes me sound like I'm better than this movie. I'm not. It's just, I don't know. I kind of, it has provocations that I felt like we're building to something, and then it, as we've all kind of mentioned, just takes the obvious route.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Kevin, if you want to make a point.
I was just gonna say that the scene where Gugino comes in after the person that she was with or whatever, like, beat her up and whatnot, and Sarsgaard's first thing is like, well, what did you do to make him beat you up? And she was like, I didn't do anything. He was like, oh no, of course, I was just saying, like, what did you do that made him mad? You know, it was just like, even he is just like, it's just, yeah, it's just like he picks and chooses when he cares about people in that industry,
which is why it feels weird that, I'm sorry, Bryden.
No, I was also gonna say, I love Sarsgaard's choice that when he's listening to, like, the sex thing that, like, Gugino did that, like, made her client, like, so into her. Like, Sarsgaard's, like, leaning in, like, he has, like, his fist on his face and everything. It's like, you're way too into this story that, like, clearly had an awful end and everything. It's like, it's just a very funny choice from Sarsgaard in that scene.
And is this kind of what it's getting to your quibbles with it, Bryden? Is that, like, is the movie... I don't think the movie's saying Molly Parker's character deserves any of this, but is it, like, punishing her for the sake of, like, an arc that she needs to learn? Like, is that what the movie's trying to say? Because that isn't right. Like, you know, like, I don't think she needs to learn anything. She has every right to have boundaries. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's the other thing that is kind of like, yeah, sex workers are allowed to have boundaries in whatever capacity or, like, personal freedom. Like, that's the thing, is, like, it's just kind of this make of it what you will, and I'm kind of like, all right, sure, I guess. I wasn't offended by anything. It's not like it, you know, I you know, and obviously, as we've, you know, as you both mentioned, Wayne wanted it to feel voyeuristic. That's the whole point of the movie. But it's like, you know, like, does she have to be put in the same position that Gugino's put in order to, quote, learn her lesson? Is that, like, what the movie's trying to say? Which, I mean, obviously she does have the power play final move at the end where she masturbates in front of him, but, like, did she have to be, which is not, I'm not saying, like, assault never can exist in movies. I'm you know, like, no. If it's handled responsibly, and I wasn't even offended by I didn't think it was, like, that exploitative, or, like, it's more about the context of what the movie's saying about the assault as opposed to the way it was, like, filmed. I know I'm getting into dicey territory here. Does that make any sense? You know what I mean?
Well, no,
like,
it's definitely worth talking about, because, like, it's, like, a huge part of the movie, but, like, it's, I don't know, I understand, like, it's kind of tries to split it both ways in, like, that scene where, like, you do see Parker's reaction during the assault, and it is, like, I mean, I don't want to, like, get into, like, too, like, analyzing the scene or anything, but, like, she, like, the blank sort of look that she gets is, like, really upsetting in a way where you are put in her shoes.
Deeply upsetting, yeah.
But then, like, doesn't the scene end on, like, Sarsgaard, like, bawling, and she's just, like, sort of blurry in the background? It's like,
it fades out on his sobbing face. Like, it's a close-up of his sobbing face, which, I mean, it's kind of the issue I had with, I remember, I know this is going to seem like a weird pull, but, like, when the Lucas Hedges movie Boy Erased had a scene of assault where Lucas Hedges is assaulted by Joe Alwyn, and then after the assault, it's just Joe Alwyn being like, there's something wrong with me, and, like, he's sobbing, and then he runs out of the room. I'm like, am I supposed to feel empathetic for the person who just raped Lucas Hedges right now? Like, it is, like, such a sensitive topic that, for the record, I have not dealt with any type of assault whatsoever, and I'm sorry if this comes off as tone deaf or offensive in any way. I'm trying to be as sensitive as possible. It's just that thing where I'm just like, I don't like the way this is framed in any way, you know, like.
Yeah, and if the ending of Parker, like, if we're to take the ending as, like, I'm sort of taking it, where, like, Parker and Sarsgaard sort of resume the relationship, I feel like the movie, maybe I would, like, and it's, again, not that, like, movies can't be complicated or anything, but it's like, I feel like I need, like, an extra step, like, to see, like, how her character, like, that would be interesting to see, like, how her character gets to that relationship, you know, like, look, I don't think, like, Sarsgaard should be anywhere near her, because he's, like, a dangerous person and everything, but it is, like, I don't know, if that is, like, how the movie's ending, where it's, like, even after all the stuff that has transpired, they still continue, like, a dynamic together, it's like, well, I don't know if the movie's given me enough about why she would be into
why
that
she would
at
ever
all.
want to come back. Yeah, like
again, it's like where the movie does like kind of a bad job of trying to like split the two between the two perspectives. It's more unequally weighted towards like the Skarsgård character. And again, sorry if I'm dominating the conversation on this movie. I don't want to be talking too much, but
I definitely agree with all that. It's the weird thing of, like you were saying, it's like especially about like I was saying, my initial thoughts were it reaches a peak and then it's just like, okay, just get me out of here. That's kind of during the assault scene, because I was just like, and before that also, where he's just like, you don't feel anything. I was just like, oh boy. But and then the ending just where it's like he goes back home and it's just like he gets the answering machine. It's like, you have like $25 million now, even though you don't deserve it, and you're supposed to be like, damn, this guy's life's rough.
but he also shouldn't.
He has all this money, but
and
he can't buy love. Yeah, you can't buy it. Yeah, man.
Also, as a note, it's really funny, like, when he had the flashback with his, like, coworker, the .com business, like, his friend, like, is, like, saying, you know, like, you, like, need to, like, get out of your house, stop jerking off, like, get over your your ex-girlfriend, and he's just, like, then, like, he follows that up by saying, like, you know, I could easily replace you at the company. I'm thinking, like, is this friend gonna fire him if he doesn't get laid? Like, that's pretty shitty terms.
I think that qualifies as some form of sexual harassment in the workplace. like, that's, like, I don't know.
Yeah, the plot description also doesn't talk about all the emails he's getting from people that are just like, so apparently you're in Las Vegas with a stripper?
Yeah. Oh yeah, the camera like pans over, so the font is huge. Like,
yeah.
And it's like,
it was just like, also, if you're like on the way to be a .com millionaire, you couldn't like, I don't know, like, hey, I'm gonna be out of town for like 3 days. Like, God, you're a terrible employee, man.
Also, I asked this question as someone who has not seen this movie, but I couldn't help but think of it, and based on what I know of it, has anyone here seen Last Tango in Paris?
Nope.
No, that was a DVD I saw though at Blockbusters though, and being like, ooh, what's this, like, you know, sort of salacious looking movie.
I feel really bad that I haven't seen it, obviously, because it's a groundbreaking, you know, piece of...
I don't feel bad that I haven't seen it.
No, but that's exactly what I was about to get to that. Based on what we know of it, I don't want to see it based on what we know happened to Maria Schneider, but the Ice Cube scene that happens here is, I assume, a gender-flipped thing about the butter scene. That
maybe
that's kind of what I was thinking of, based on what I've read about it, and it kind of feels like it's getting to, you know, it's trying to ask for that comparison. I maybe I shouldn't even bring this up because I haven't even seen the fucking movie.
I can't really comment on it because I haven't seen that movie.
But like that,
no, it's okay to bring it up if you know of that scene though.
Yeah,
like if it reminded you of it. My opinion on that movie, even if nothing bad happened to it behind the scenes, I'm just not interested.
Yeah.
Like, don't care.
It's just, I feel like it's asking for that kind of comparison based on what I know of the film, but also everything we're talking about in terms of what issues we had with the gender dynamic in this film is kind of what I heard about, you know, with the some of the controversies in Last Tango in Paris, and it's kind of interesting to read about like how this was that movie made 30 years later, and it's kind of like, have erotic movies or movies about sex always just kind of is what we're struggling with, just basically just the complete inequity that these movies have had for years and still is a problem today. I don't know.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it is interesting to watch this movie after, like, a week after Vulture magazine was having the whole tweet about, like, you know, talking about, like, sex in movies and everything. It is, I mean, look, in the 20 years since this movie's come out, like, we've had, like, a lot of, like, sexually explicit movies and, you know, stuff about sex work too. I mean, I was thinking of, like, The Girlfriend Experience, which was, like, I haven't seen the Soderbergh movie, but then there was the Stars series, which I saw the first season of with Bradley Keough, and that's actually a really interesting depiction of sex work. One, because of, like, how frank it is about sexual encounters too, but also, like, it shows, that's interesting as a sort of contrast to this, because it shows, like, a diverse range of, like, the interactions that can happen, where it will sometimes you do get creeps who, like, are coming after Bradley Keough's character and that, but then, like, other times it's just like, oh, this is like this person who wants, like, a connection and everything, and, like, company and everything, and it's like that's maybe why I appreciate that, like, a depiction of that, where it's like showing it's not just, like, you know, a black and white, like it shows, like, it can be multiple different types of relationships that can happen within that industry that I think are very interesting. Rather than like this movie seems to have a very negative view. It's like, well, turns out these guys will be bad. It's like kind of like a negative view of sex work, and I feel like in Center of the World, in my opinion. But yeah, and I don't want to drag this conversation on too much longer if you don't want to talk about it. But I'm interested to hear about like maybe talking about some of the sexier scenes in this movie because, or Charlie, you said that you didn't think this movie was erotic. I feel like the movie is very sensual. Like I don't know. I mean, when you get into these things, it's subjective, but I do think it is very striking with like sort of the flashbacks where like it will be like sort of bleached to color, but then Wayne talked about how he wanted to like have like sort of like the heightened sensuality of like, you know, the color red and everything on like red lips and everything. Yeah. I think and the close-ups of like, you know, again, maybe it's the DV quality that maybe like, I don't know if that like drains the eroticism out of it, but like sort of with like the splotchy skin textures and everything. But I think like that, like this sort of intimate, you know, extreme close-ups of like eyes and skin and lips and everything. I think there is like kind of a heightened intimacy and sensuality. It is like kind of erotic.
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like it starts off that way, and then every night that they're in Vegas, it starts to get less and less sexy and more like clocking in and out, which, you know, it is a job for her, but also, you know, the feelings aspect of it. But it definitely, as it goes on with those days in Vegas, it definitely becomes less sensual, and it's just becoming like where he's like asleep all day, just waiting until 8 p.m. for her to come through, you know, that type of thing, where it's becoming less of a sensual thing and more of a dependency type thing.
It definitely takes that shift when they start kissing for the first time and she's like, well, what am I doing? And then he's just like kind of pins her against the wall and was like, it's okay, it's okay. And like I think that I'll correct myself. Yeah, there is that scene where she's taking, you know, the scene in the blue dress is erotic. It's very sensually charged, but I guess maybe it's just, the sourness of it all, which is obviously intentional. I'm not saying the movie isn't saying it's wrong. Clearly the movie's saying it's not okay, and it's examining. I guess that's why I was so disappointed in this, is I kind of wanted to go into it like thinking like, no, people just didn't see, you know, because there's a lot of movies from the early 2000s that were, you know, I mean, look at something like In the Cut, for example, which was completely maligned, and like it just turns out 2003 wasn't ready for that movie. I was kind of hoping that like this would be one of those situations where I was just kind of like, no, I kind of just got everything I expected to get out of this, you know, like.
Well, that reminds me of a movie kind of similar to this that was much maligned at the time, and then as the time has gone on, people have reclaimed it. New Rose Hotel, which I attempted to watch. Boy, howdy, did I try! But
it's kind of one for Ferrara head. I like that movie a lot, but even I, as a Ferrara fan, wrestled with some stuff towards the last half hour of that movie. But I definitely want to see it again because I feel like that movie's better at putting the men's feet to the fire in terms of complicitness, though, and in terms of like using sex as a way to barter payment, and also, you know, Asia Argento's character is much more. She's a different type of character than the Molly Parker character, which is kind of like, I'll do this because I'm broke, and and because this guy kind of won't leave me alone. Where Asia Argento's kind of like, I'll do it if you're offering me a lot of money. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, whatever. I guess it is just that thing of like, and I hate to bring this up, but obviously the whole it's against the rules thing, kind of 50 Shades of Grey-esque also, like,
sure,
but I don't know. It's interesting how, I know we touched upon this, but the more Carla Gugino came in, I was like, I want to learn about this character, but then her involvement actually muddied the waters in ways I found to be making the film more dated and more kind of like, if that makes any sense. By bringing in a third party who also happens to be a woman who's also dealing with similar things, it kind of makes things set into binaries in a way that I found to be the interesting character, but makes the subject matter less ambiguous, I guess I'll just say, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it seems like ambiguousness is the center of this movie. No, I'm just embarrassed by that. We have any other final thoughts? Anything we'd like to get out?
What did you think of the soundtrack? It seems like a lot of like kind of trance and electronic music. Kind
Yeah,
of,
it
like, just
rolled.
sort of, like, yeah, it's that kind of adds to like sort of the kind of sexy vibe of the movie. I think of like some of the early sexual encounters when like the almost striptease acts and everything. I think that's sort of like it is relaxing. It is like the relaxing vibe of sort of like that jazzy electronic music. I think does like sort of add to the vibe of like some of the scenes. I don't know.
Yeah, I also do. I mean, I feel like we've been kind of negative, even though we all like think it's like a fine to good movie. But another thing is like, I mean, this is not a problem with the movie, but I just wish it dealt more with the internet of it all. Like a movie that I vehemently hate, like Demon Lover, has a lot more to do with internet and whatnot, and it feels like it's more so just like, yeah, I'm a .com person. Like, it's no different than like if he was a lawyer or something. Like, it's just his job.
Yeah, it's not very specific about the workings of that, other than like he makes a lot of money and he doesn't really have to do a whole lot. It could be. You're right. It could be literally anything that he's doing.
Also, don't listen to Kevin. Demon Lover is fucking great.
I've never seen it. I'm curious to see it because I want to see more ACS, and it has like Chloe Sevigny and Gina Gershon. That sounds cool.
Oh, I know. You know it. Yeah, it should be, but yeah. Which is the fun thing is we have so many movies from this miniseries that were shot on video and are also about the internet, while the internet is still a thing that we're trying to figure out. So, I mean, you know, you have stuff like what are some other internet movies? We've done Strangeland and Pi, kind of.
Yeah.
Or not exactly Pi isn't exactly the internet, but dealing with computers and stuff like that, and just, you know, the thing that we had in the late 90s and early 2000s, of course, is the Y2K stuff of it all, but also just like what are we going to do in our society if we start to give too much to this internet and whatnot. I wish they would have, you know, maybe if he didn't meet her at a cafe, but met her in like a very, very early like sex work website or something like that, you know.
Or an internet cafe.
Oh, that'd be nice. Oh man, an internet cafe on fucking video from 2001. Yeah,
it's the scene from Closer where Jude Law is pranking Clive Owen. That's how we met her.
Yeah, so I wish it would have leaned into that more, but of course that's not a problem with the movie. That's just more so what I would like, you know, being that it's 2001 and I mean, you wouldn't have been able to get it any other time.
I guess what's interesting about that too is that these two characters, I mean, you know, the computer, the internet, the industry involving the internet and like computer, she wants to be an artist. He's good at like programming. He's all about, you know, like there's stuff to, you know, get into there, like mathematics and, you know, everything, you know, precise coding and stuff like that, like everything, which is kind of, I think what the film's hinting at is like, I did all the right things. I provided the right formula for her to get to love me. And she's just kind of like, yeah, it doesn't work like that. Whereas she wants to be an artist, but is struggling financially.
No, he's a mathematic person and he thinks he knows A and B, A plus B equals C.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
2 plus 2 is 4.
2 plus 2 is 4.
But yeah, I do want. It still gets a recommendation for me. So if people are listening to this and they're just like, well, I'm not going to check this out if we seem too negative. It is a very interesting curio of the time. I feel like if it was more modern day, it would have felt kind of samey. But you know, just being that it. Actually, today is the 21st anniversary of the movie. I just looked that up.
What the fuck?
I know. On 420.
It was released on 420. People got high and saw this movie.
Yeah, it was either that or I'm looking right here. Spy Kids. Yeah.
I don't know. I'd much rather smoke a joint and go into Freddy Got Fingered, but that's just me. Speaking of,
man.
Just to let you know, I like offensive movies from time to time. People, I am not this straight-laced dork.
That would be so wild watching Freddy Got Fingered, being like, I am so offended. It was just like,
well, Roger Ebert was. Remember?
It's like, yeah. What did he? What did he say? It was.
Movie, by the way.
He did. Wow.
No, okay. Roger Ebert was deeply offended about the. I mean, let's not. I mean, it. that's the thing, is Freddy Got Fingered takes place in Tom Greenland, and it so clearly takes place in Tom
Right,
Greenland.
it's a live action cartoon.
Yeah,
like,
but
come on.
But Roger Ebert was like, I just saw him swinging this baby by its umbilical cord, and I just felt such sadness for the mother sitting in bed. And I'm just like, it's not wrong to feel that if it was like set in reality, if the movie's tone was different. But it's just like, this is clearly
Didn't he
Land.
say? Yeah, didn't he say in his review, he's just like, Freddy Got Fingered is not the bottom of the barrel. This movie doesn't even be respected to be in the same sentence as barrels. Or something like
it's
that.
exactly that. Yeah.
But then, like, he did renege on it a little bit when he reviewed Stealing Harvard, I think, like, the following year. He said, like, okay, I gave 0 stars to Freddy Got Fingered. Not a movie I like, but I do remember it. I will not remember... he's like, basically, I will not remember Stealing Harvard.
Oh, come on. Stealing Harvard's so fun. It's got Tom Green and Jason Lee. It's pretty great. I'll stick up for Stealing Harvard. It has the Andrew W.K. needle drop. It's pretty great. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Almost Major. Please rate, review, and subscribe to us on iTunes. Please follow the pod on Twitter at Almost Major to keep up to date with what movies we will be covering in the future. Myself, I can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at Kev Bonesy. Bryden can be found on Twitter at Bryden Doyle and on Letterboxd at J Doyle. Charlie can be found on Twitter and Letterboxd at CT Nash91. Once again, thank you for listening.